Welcome, patient souls who know that the brightest sparks are the ones that glow steadily beneath the embers, waiting for the right breath of fate to bring them alive. Welcome home, to the corner where feelings are louder than rumors and the truth slips through the cracks of denial. You're on Secrets Behind the Stars. Today, the gossip universe trembled with a revelation I can only call earth-shaking. Erase the tidy timelines you've memorized, forget the neat scripts served to the public. Barış backed us, usually wrapped in velvet silence, lowered his shield and let us glimpse a past that wasn't supposed to be seen. He did it softly, but with a certainty you can't fake. And through that open window, a secret came rolling in, a story that began 2 years ago, a missed moment that turned into destiny, a first impression that almost sabotaged everything, a love that waited until the timing grew ripe enough to be harvested. Before we step into this quiet storm together, show a little love for the dig we do behind the scenes. Tap like if you believe in timing, subscribe so you don't miss the heartbeats behind the headlines, and for those craving front row seats in this theater of whispers, the join, cattle, button is your velvet pass. Are you ready to discover what really happened 2 years ago? Then breathe in, and follow me. It happened in a room that smelled of perfume, polished floors, and carefully curated applause. A gala that should have been like any other. Smiles for the cameras, a parade of gowns and suits, polite remarks about upcoming projects, respectful distance from anything too personal. Barış, a man whose work speaks loudly and whose private life is a locked diary, was surrounded by microphones. The press leaned in, expecting deflection, whether talk, a wink at a future script. But something had shifted inside him. Maybe it was a quiet courage born from happiness. Maybe it was the tenderness of the woman at his side, a tenderness that doesn't need to shout to be undeniable. Whatever it was, Barış decided not to hide. He didn't talk about ratings or roles. He spoke about her. He spoke about Yağmur Yüksel. And then the sentence that detonated across every timeline: their story didn't begin the way we were told. Everyone thinks we met during a project, that it was one of those cliché on-set sparks, he said calmly, as if each word had been weighed before leaving his lips. But our first contact goes further back. 2 years back. We were both living different lives, and yet we noticed each other. 2 years. Just 2 words, and the entire map changed. It wasn't instant lightning under studio lights. It was a seed buried deep, kept warm by silence, tended by the passing of time while they walked separate streets, unaware that those streets curled toward the same corner. But the reveal didn't stop there. Barış stripped away the glitter and let us hear something tender, almost shy, beneath the armor of fame. He described the first time his gaze fell on Yağmur like a confession that cost him a piece of pride. She was quiet. Distant, even. Honestly, I thought, she'll never really see me. She felt unreachable in that stillness. How human is that? We imagine men like him as unflinching, as if attention were a currency they print themselves. But standing in front of Yağmur's calm, he felt small. He didn't feel like Barış the name, the one that trends. He felt like a man, and a man can doubt. He thought she wouldn't be interested. He mistook her reserve for chill, her poise for a door closed from inside. Time proved him wrong. What looked like ice was a mirror-smooth surface, protecting a sea with its own fierce currents. Beneath that poised silence lived a will you can't bulldoze, a dignity that doesn't barter for visibility. In a world where too many chase light for light's sake, where companions of stars often line up for reflected glow, Yağmur chose the opposite. She chose to be a whisper instead of a shout. An enigma instead of an echo. And paradoxically, that choice became the fortress around their bond. Keeping our private life protected made everything more precious, Barış said, not with bravado, but with gratitude. Yağmur never ran toward Barış the actor. She reached for the man, and to reach him, she refused the circus, stepped away from the clamor, and let silence become their sanctuary. But how does one move from 2 observers separated by polite distance to 2 souls that call each other home? That's where timing comes to collect its due. After that first brief sighting, life demanded their attention elsewhere. 2 years pressed on, shaping them, smoothing edges, adding depth. They grew, stumbled, learned, and lived through days that prepared them without their knowledge. Some people mark you even before they enter your life fully, he mused, and you could hear that thought had lived inside him for a long time. Then fate tugged on an old thread. Mutual friends. A crossing arranged by chance. Or by something that wears chance like a disguise. They met again, but not as they were. They had become ready. They didn't swap small talk. They didn't perform for each other. They sat with the big things, life, the ache of ambition, the loneliness that waits backstage even after applause. They opened their palms and showed each other the fragile pieces. And somewhere in that honest exchange, the fog in Barry's mind parted. He recognized the shape he'd been missing. That day, he recalled with a warmth that curled around every syllable, it all clicked. The second meeting made everything clear. Not a new character added to a crowded plot. The missing piece without which the story never made sense. What happened next is what always happens when a story is real enough to scare people with its sincerity. The internet stopped doom scrolling long enough to feel. Comments poured in, but they weren't about clothes or angles. They were about weight, about quietness, about two humans choosing to be seen without spotlight glare. Fans called their connection deep, almost old-fashioned in a world of public oversharing. They admired Yağmur's refusal to cash in on someone else's spotlight. She became a symbol of elegance without performance, of loyalty to self before loyalty to hype. For many, their bond felt like one of the last safe places in a landscape of curated intimacy. Do you believe in timing? Have you ever watched the right person drift past at the wrong hour and then, years later, watched the same face arrive at the exact minute you could finally open the door? This tale whispers a warning: don't force the lock. If it's yours, it will return with the right key, even if the wait hurts. Tell me your stories of delays that turned into destiny in the comments. Let's turn this space into a diary of almosts that became forevers. And if you're breathing a little easier because of this, remember that your support through the join, cattle, button is how we keep narrating with care instead of noise. Let's circle back to the idea of coldness. Isn't it wild how our fears draw conclusions and tattoo them as facts? Barış saw quiet and labeled it distance. He saw poise and called it a wall. He whispered inside himself, she won't look my way, and almost let the moment die. How many beginnings never get written because silence gets misread as rejection? Luckily, destiny rescheduled. And this time, he peered past the stillness and discovered the courage that lives behind restraint. He found a woman with plans sharp enough to cut through distraction, with emotional standards that didn't bend, with a vision that ran parallel to his own. Our perspectives on life, our goals, our emotional expectations, somehow they matched, he shared, soft but certain. What locked them together wasn't heat without fuel. It was values. Compatibility that holds steady when the tide tries to rip you apart. And in a world gorging on exposure, Barış delivered a quiet manifesto. Privacy isn't a whim, it's a lifeline if you want love to breathe. Protecting what's ours made it more valuable, he said, and it sounded like relief. Away from eyes that judge and mouths that speculate, you remember who you are. You can admit the knot in your chest. You can say you're afraid of not being enough. You can be the man, not the marquee. With Yağmur, he didn't have to play a part. She did not fall for the symbol. She chose the person. She gave him room to set the mask down and let the unguarded version live. The man who once feared he wouldn't be seen finally met someone who sees in high definition. Now that the curtain has lifted a little, the public looks at them differently. No longer just the beautiful mystery. They seem like two people who understood that patience is not passivity, that sometimes the most daring move is to wait. Their story didn't sprint, it unfolded, petal by careful petal. This confession becomes a hinge in their public narrative. They don't have to pretend it began in a way that photographs better, because the truth is more cinematic than any script. It is hope disguised as biography. It says that even if tonight you're alone with your doubts, even if the one you ache for seems far and framed in glass, time may be arranging a reunion with a precision only hindsight understands. 2 years can feel like a lifetime, but if the ending is a love that finally fits, you bless every second. We arrive at the quiet end of this journey through a memory Barış has carried like a secret note in his pocket. He reminded us that love is patient in a world obsessed with instant proof, that first glances can lie, that the missing piece often waits just off stage until we can make room for it. If this touched your heart, if you believe in second chances that arrive right on time, press like and share it with someone who needs to hear that waiting isn't the same as losing. Subscribe to Secrets Behind the Stars and ring that bell, because there are 1,000 untold stories fluttering behind curtains, and we'll be right here to bring them into the light with the gentleness they deserve. Thank you for listening with every corner of your heart. Consider this your hug through the screen. Until the next time fate taps on your shoulder and you turn, surprised to find exactly who you've been waiting for. And because some truths deserve to be said twice, hear this again. Do not fear the stillness in another, sometimes stillness is how a strong soul keeps its balance. Do not fear time, sometimes time is the co-author of the romance you cannot rush. Do not fear your own softness, it's the softness that lets love land without breaking. Barış and Yağmur are not a fairy tale. They are two people who missed, paused, circled back, and chose, again and again, privacy over performance, depth over display, substance over spectacle. That's why this confession doesn't feel like gossip, it feels like a lantern held up in a dark room. It lights the path for anyone who has ever wondered if the right story can survive the wait. If you're still here, you already know the answer. Let it find you when you're ready. We'll be here to tell it when you are.